In this video, we're breaking the story into clear phases so you can visualize the transformation step by step. Over roughly 150 years, from the early 1800s to 1997, Hong Kong evolved from a modest maritime settlement into one of the most powerful commercial hubs in the world. Subscribe for more long-form historical reconstructions like this. Let's begin with the sea. In the early 1800s, life revolved around boats. Wooden junks, merchant brigs, and coastal trading vessels filled the harbor daily. Fishing fleets moved in coordinated patterns at sunrise. Cargo was transferred manually: rope, pulley, shoulder, and sweat. After 1842, control shifted under treaty, and the harbor's importance multiplied overnight. Steamships began appearing by the 1850s. Coal depots were built. Dockyards expanded to repair iron hulls. Navigation technology improved. Lighthouses, signaling systems, and structured anchorage zones followed. By the late 1800s, the port had become one of the busiest in Asia. International shipping lines established permanent routes. Cargo volume increased year after year. Warehouses multiplied along the waterfront. Banking houses financed maritime trade. Insurance firms protected cargo and vessels from loss. The city's identity was maritime first. Everything else came after. Harbor pilots became essential figures. They memorized tidal patterns, underwater rock formations, and seasonal wind shifts. Incoming vessels relied on local navigational expertise to avoid grounding in narrow channels. Maritime charts were redrawn repeatedly as dredging projects altered the seabed and expanded anchorage capacity. Shipbuilding techniques evolved steadily. Traditional wooden construction methods coexisted with emerging industrial ship repair technologies. Workshops along the waterfront specialized in rope making, sail repair, metal riveting, boiler maintenance, and hull reinforcement. Skilled labor became highly valued, and apprenticeship systems formed within dock communities. Telegraph lines connected the port to regional trade centers. Shipping schedules became more precise. Cargo manifests were documented with increasing bureaucratic structure. Port authorities implemented standardized docking fees and customs procedures, formalizing what had once been informal exchange. Coal-powered steamships required refueling infrastructure. Bunkering stations operated continuously, supplying fuel to long-distance vessels traveling between East Asia, India, and Europe. This positioned the harbor not only as a destination, but as a critical refueling and redistribution node in global maritime circulation. Weather monitoring improved as well. Typhoon warnings became more organized. Storm shelters were constructed for smaller vessels. Signal towers relayed flag-based communication systems before wireless radio became widespread in the early 20th century. Insurance underwriting expanded alongside risk. Marine insurers calculated probabilities of storm damage, piracy, mechanical failure, and cargo spoilage. Maritime law firms handled disputes involving delayed shipments, damaged goods, and ownership claims. By the early 1900s, shipping activity operated on layered coordination: navigation, finance, labor, regulation, repair, and communication, all synchronized around the harbor. The sea was no longer only a natural feature. It had become a managed economic engine. The port did not simply grow larger, it grew more complex. By the late 1800s, construction intensified. Granite government buildings rose beside brick commercial blocks. Roads were cut through steep terrain. Retaining walls stabilized slopes. Drainage systems improved gradually. In the early 1900s, tram systems were introduced. Electric lighting spread, public reservoirs expanded, sewage systems modernized. After 1949, industrial growth accelerated dramatically. Refugees and entrepreneurs brought capital, labor, and machinery. Textile factories dominated the 1950s and 1960s. Multi-story factory buildings were constructed tightly together. Workers operated in dense industrial zones. Public housing became essential. Concrete residential towers replaced earlier tenements. Entire housing estates were built within years. Infrastructure, highways, tunnels, port terminals, expanded in the 1970s. The city grew upward because it had to. Concrete replaced brick. Steel reinforced foundations. Elevators became standard in high-rise construction. Urban density became part of its identity. Reclamation projects extended the shoreline outward. Earth, stone, and debris were used to create additional buildable land. Entire districts rose on newly formed ground. This engineering altered coastlines permanently and allowed expansion of commercial and residential zones. High-density factory buildings followed a vertical manufacturing model. Raw materials entered on lower floors. Assembly lines occupied middle levels. Finished goods exited through loading bays connected to trucking routes. Efficiency depended on vertical logistics systems, freight elevators, reinforced concrete slabs, and coordinated shift schedules. Water supply engineering became increasingly sophisticated. Reservoir networks were expanded into surrounding hills. Aqueduct systems channeled fresh water toward densely populated districts. Pumping stations maintained pressure necessary for high-rise plumbing systems. Transportation infrastructure transformed internal mobility. Ferry systems connected urban centers to outlying districts. Later, underground rail planning began, anticipating population growth and reducing congestion on surface roads. Road tunnels cut through mountains to shorten travel times between key zones. The 1840s marked a turning point. After armed conflict in the early 1840s, control of the territory changed hands in 1842. Fortifications were built. Military presence expanded. Administrative systems were imposed. This was not gradual. It was immediate and strategic. In 1860 and again in 1898, additional agreements expanded territorial control under long-term arrangements. Governance structures became more formalized. Courts, administrative offices, and security systems were institutionalized. Then came 1941. During a major global war, the city was attacked and occupied. Bombardments damaged infrastructure. Civilian life collapsed under rationing and military rule. Trade slowed dramatically. For several years, the harbor that once symbolized prosperity reflected hardship. In 1945, control shifted again after the war ended. Reconstruction began immediately. Finally, in 1997, sovereignty transferred under a negotiated agreement reached in the 1980s. This marked the end of 155 years of colonial administration. War reshaped the city more than once, but each time it rebuilt. Barracks, supply depots, and defensive artillery placements were positioned strategically along elevated terrain. Surveillance outposts monitored coastal approaches. Military engineering units improved road access between strategic points to ensure rapid troop movement if conflict returned. Legal codes introduced under new administration formalized property rights, commercial regulations, and civic order. Courts began operating under codified systems unfamiliar to many local inhabitants. Law enforcement institutions were reorganized to reflect centralized authority rather than informal regional power networks. Population demographics shifted gradually. Merchants, laborers, soldiers, administrators, and families from multiple regions contributed to a layered social hierarchy. Segregated districts emerged in certain periods, reflecting political and economic inequalities.